Hi, this is Henry Chamberlain. Katie Skelly has a new graphic novel, Heaven, published by Fantagraphics. Her work includes the graphic novels My Pretty Vampire, The Agency, and Maids. In 2021, she edited Queen of the Ring, Wrestling Drawings by Jaime Hernandez. She co-hosts the comics podcast Thick Lines with Sally Madden, and she's a regular contributor at the Comics Journal. Thank you, Katie, for joining me.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, I wanted to ask you a question that has been brewing in my mind. And we have the luxury now of having these four books out that Fantagraphics published. It has occurred to you now that we can do this now, that the books are maybe somehow speaking to each other, that they're somehow interconnected. What kind of thoughts come to mind when you think about that?
I think they all do in their own way. And I guess, for sure, My Pretty Vampire and Maids show up in Heaven. I think everything kind of shows up in the agency in one way or another. But yeah, I think they definitely all evoke a certain mood and a certain time period. And yeah, just a general like atmosphere of sort of dread.
Exactly. That's what I'm driving at. I was well, sometimes I'll get so caught up in trying to be super prepared that I over prepare or I start to freak out. But I read all the books again to make sure that I was right to say this, and they do all have this unsettling feeling, and part of that comes from your love of horror genre, especially the, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the Giallo era, and Dario Argento, which honestly I was not familiar with his work, but part of my research was to watch, I guess, considered his best movie, Deep Red, which had a lot of visual gems in it. It could be hard for the viewer at times, especially the ending.
Mm.
Um,
Sure.
what thoughts come to mind when you think about your background as a horror movie, especially Italian, a vintage horror movie? Being a fan of that genre and your work, what comes to mind?
I love horror, but I really don't like being scared. It's not something that I seek out. And with giallo films, it's like you get sort of all the trappings of horror and you get all the mood and again, that same sort of atmosphere. But, it's very rare that I'm frightened of a giallo. Every now and then, like Fulci's The Psychic, there's a scene in that really freaks me out because it's just unsettling. It's just shot kind of strange.
Hmm.
But, it's quite rare to not figure out who the killer is. You can usually sort of tell what's going on. So for that reason, I really fell in love with Giallo and I loved all the soundtracks. I loved the wardrobes and I loved, the sort of cost effectiveness of it. And that's something that I really like about a lot of late 60s horror films like Jean Rollin and then moving into science fiction like Barbarella. These sets were just nothing. Like, they're all real, like they're all practical, but it would just be like bubble wrap or like a curtain, and that's enough. And I just thought that that was so interesting, and I had never really seen films that were blocked in that way. And so I'm someone who doesn't particularly enjoy spending a lot of time on backgrounds. And so when I discovered that you could kind of work around with color and create mood in this sort of way rather than having to specify every object in the frame, I thought, oh, this could be something. This could work together. And I really started looking at things that way with My Pretty Vampire. That was the first book I ever did with Fantagraphics, and that was really where I think my style changed quite a lot from what I was doing before to that point.
Yeah, everything is pared down a lot in Deep Red. Even the uh, exterior scenes, because they're in a town square and there's that giant statue, but it's very minimal one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. And what it lacks in dialogue and plot and backgrounds, and a good dub is amazing wardrobes and, just cruelty. There's in Suspiria and in Tenebrae, people running away from dogs that are horrible and chasing them and still ending up in barbed wire or, like cut up by broken glass. It's just you can't get away from the sort of physical eviscerations in those worlds. But again, those practical effects, they're so wonderful. And when you see something like Suspiria, when all the maggots fall out of the ceiling, you're like, this is compelling. This is good cinema. I like I like it.
Let me go over to the actual book. So I decided to start here. That this seems like the a good spot to begin with all the girls together at IHOP, and it's a very much a high school story. Uh, what comes to mind when you were thinking about my next book? What's it going to be about? Can you get this into your head? How did you come about with a high school story?
I had done a book. I had done a book called Maids in 2020, and it came out during the pandemic. And I really loved working on that book. It was to that point my favorite thing I ever worked on. I was very, very excited to go out into the world with it and sort of tour with it, and I don't know, let it go free into the world. And the pandemic just shut all of that down. Of course, a lot of other people had it much worse than that, but that was really difficult for me. That time period was really hard. And it was really hard for me to come up with the next idea for the next comic because I just had this wall in my mind of what does it matter? Like no one is ever going to see anyone ever again, and life is just going to be awful like this. And, I just kind of got myself into a bad place. And I just was looking for things that were like making me laugh. And I was looking at Twitter and I saw someone tweet that The Weeknd makes music for haunted strip clubs. And I really love The Weeknd's music. And so I just thought that was so great. And I was like, you know what? It's such a funny idea. I'm just going to see if there's anything there, if I kind of like prod around with that idea. And as I was writing it, I really was like, this is like my Sin City. This is like grit. This is crazy. And the further I got into it, I was like, oh no, but there's all these other characters that are jumping out at me, and I don't know why. I don't know why this like high schooler is bothering me right now. I guess she like wants to tell her story, so maybe we can fit her in somewhere. And like, but it as I kept writing it and kept inserting her into this world, it brought up so many different things from what the original intention was, and it became about going and sort of looking back at like this particular time in my life when, it just felt like you had so much potential and yet you had no idea what you were walking into. Kind of like this new world after the pandemic was. So maybe my mind made some kind of association there. But yeah, it just kept pulling me in. And it took a long time to work on. I'll say I moved to Los Angeles after Maids. And yeah, it was just hard to get back on track. To want to get back on track was also really hard. So I worked on it over the course of 6 years, off and on. But yeah, that's how it became high school.
Well, it's beautiful work. I think you mentioned in another interview that you don't tend to do as much dialogue, but this one is like more like a traditional comic where it's lots of dialogue back and forth.
Yeah, I thought it would be interesting to try something like that and try to make something a little bit more lived in, not necessarily compromising what I wanted to do, but just giving it some more texture in these ways. Like, the girls go over to Dolly's house and, Sheila tries on a dress from Dolly's childhood that's like too small, or Dolly thinking like, an LL Bean tankini is like appropriate to audition at a strip club with, like just a lot of things. Oh, the braces thing, of course. Just things that I thought would, add some color to this world. And it turns out I really enjoyed writing that way. So I'm curious how people are going to receive it.
I'm sort of just flipping through, so I'm not giving away the whole thing. Um, yeah, if there's something that comes to mind, but I don't want to spoil anything. Basically, it's lots of hijinks ensue. We know that, and well, I'll ask you without saying anything. So you're happy with the ending? Would you have considered a different ending, or was there more than one way of ending it when as you were making it for yourself? Or
No. Well, actually, wait, no, that's not true. I did kind of have another idea. I never wrote it out, but it just wasn't the right move. Wasn't the right fit. So it's not even particularly interesting. I don't know why I interrupted. No, that was going to be the ending.
well, I love your format. Well, I wondered, was there any thinking going into book one and then book two that you were going to keep to a certain way, a certain look, a certain European type of format, 100-page book that's a little bit oversized?
I I didn't really have like a page count in mind, and I didn't really know if I even wanted to do like a full book again. I was just I was just gun shy about getting back into everything. And so I thought it might just exist as mini comics, or it might just be mini comics that I never end. I just make them forever until I get to this conclusion. But then, you have to sort of be realistic, and there's a certain schedule you have to work with, when you want to work with Fantagraphics and get it published sometime in the near future. And you have to kind of, I don't know, you have to slow yourself down and ask what's really possible. And doing something infinitely might not be really possible or even interesting to me. So, yeah. The size that's just the size I've been working with, for maybe the last 10 years or so now. And I love it. I think it looks great. I love those European albums.
And I think it's an ideal size. I mean, if it's a 200-page book, that's a kind of that's a different animal. Uh, I think this is a delightful page count because you can just sit down and enjoy it in one afternoon. And there's a lot going on too. I mean, don't let 100 pages fool you. You pack so much in there because I mean, the writing you must have edited a lot. Can you tell us anything about the writing process?
Yeah, it just sort of flowed pretty naturally with them, and I think I knew what everybody's voice was kind of going to be. They were, amalgamations of people I've known in my life, of, dumb situations I've gotten myself into. And, yeah, I think it all just kind of flowed from experience. Again, it was just like that, these teenagers that like would not leave me alone and wanted to be in the book. And I was just translating them.
Is there anything interesting that you can tell us about Dolly Sanchez? Like she's just a little bit older than the other girls, and they all kind of look up to her. But at the same time, she's not leadership material necessarily, but it kind of naturally happens for her because she's a little bit older, maybe a little bit wiser, but very vulnerable at the same time.
Hmm. I was thinking, well, I was thinking about myself at that age for sure, and feeling really confident and really sure of myself, even though I just had absolutely no idea what reality was whatsoever. And just in a way, though, sort of missing that mindset, like the time before you were really self-conscious. I think that's where she's at right now. And I've also written a lot of stories about people escaping things or trying to escape things, but I wanted to make a situation for Dolly where she couldn't. She can't, she's too young. She can't escape this home life that she has. She really just has to get through this last year. Like she has to get through this senior year, and then her actual life can start. And yeah, that was just a feeling that I had my senior year of high school. I remember the first day of my senior year, I remember standing up and doing the Pledge of Allegiance and looking around and being like, none of this matters at all. This won't matter this time next year. You know what I mean? So just like
Hmm.
that feeling of I'm kind of resigned, like whatever's going on here, I can't improve it. So I'm just gonna endure it and then see where I end up. I I wanted to see what it might feel like to go through that way of seeing things again.
Mm. What can you else can you tell us about your the influences? Because Giallo comes up, but then there's all kinds of manga artists. So, is there something that I'm not asking you that you might want to just blurt out? This is something that was on my mind while I was making this.
Let's see. This one I was definitely thinking about, and I do not know if I'm pronouncing it correct, but Carrascoet, the French couple, they did Beautiful Darkness and Beauty. They just had a new one come out called The Court Charade. Just really tight, really good cartooning, very elaborate and very French stories. And I just absolutely love them. They are, the work is so beautiful, so charming. So I was thinking about them. I was thinking about a book they did with a writer whose name is escaping me called Miss Don't Touch Me. I was definitely thinking about that one, especially as you get to the sort of climax of the story. Mm. Manga wise, I mean, uh, you'll notice we broke up the chapters and we called them scenes, and that's something
Hmm.
that I stole directly from Kyoko Okazaki, from the Kodansha version of River's Edge that came out a couple years ago. Those chapters are broken up by scene, so that was a direct swipe from her. So thank you, Kyoko Okazaki. Uh, what else? Yeah, I don't know. I think those would kind of be the major ones. Miss Don't Touch Me and then River's Edge.
I think when a cartoon, especially somebody as well versed as you, talks about manga, that's very uh, inspiring. I know for a fact that some academic folks don't even consider manga, and I think they're behind. They've missed a boat in a big way, and I don't know what's going on if that's going to get fixed. But I think they listen to students, and they're saying they're mentioning manga this or manga that, and I know for a fact there's some academics who just they shut it out and they don't know what they're missing. Any thoughts? Am I making sense to think these things?
Sure. My feeling on that would be good. Keep it out of the academy so we can have something we all enjoy instead
Yeah,
of overwrought, dull, tepid fiction. I would love that. Just leave it alone, academia.
there
Who
you
needs
go.
them? That's what I would say.
Good. Just want to make okay. Now let me just ask you about one project that you're working on, which kind of ties in with what's going on here. The Bad Girl Tarot cards that's coming up. As you're going to be doing a Kickstarter campaign. Is there anything you'd like to say about that?
Yeah, we actually just launched it today, just
Oh,
launched it
really?
this morning. Yes. So it'll be running through July 16th. There's a bug in here. It'll be running through July 16th. And yeah, we're halfway funded, which is amazing.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's been I couldn't have asked for like a better first day. So and we got the Projects We Love badge from Kickstarter, which is awesome. So yeah, I think we should be in pretty good shape, but it'll be running till July 16th, the next 30 days, 29 days.
Oh, great. Well, oh, another thing I can mention, along with seeing Deep Red, I went down another rabbit hole. I'm not sure I'm going to butcher his name, Suhiro Moro.
Hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned him and your Substack. I was looking through different Kelly, Skelly stuff, Katie Skelly stuff, and you're talking about how you got the look and feel for I believe that the Bad Girl Tarot cards, and you talk about an old-fashioned campaign that Kirsten Dunst was part of,
Mm.
and you mentioned Moreau's. Is there any? Well, that's That's a really good example of getting into your head. If a aspiring cartoonist wants to know, well, how do I reference something I like, or how do I use that as a jumping off point? That Substack is a perfect example. Is there something that comes to mind to share with folks here while we're talking, or?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I would say the thing that kind of like tied the room together, as it were, would be that Mew Mew show that I talk about in the Substack, a fashion campaign from 2008 that it really captured my attention then. It still has my attention now, things that just stick in your mind and you kind of travel with them for a long time until you like figure out what you can sort of do with it yourself. And yeah, I would say it's really just about incorporating elements to evoke a really specific mood on that one. And it had to be different from the previous tarot deck. And it also couldn't look too much like the comics because I really creatively just wanted to be in a different place or just try to get to a different place, I should say. And I started using a brush pen instead of my normal flare pen. So the drawings are a lot kind of juicier, I would say. I love my sort of flats a lot, but I wanted to see if I could play around with like dimensionality in that way, and and line weight and all that stuff. And I'm very pleased with it. I more than anything, I'm so happy with Heaven. I feel like I've just been on a really good upswing, the last couple of years for sure. But, just with Bad Girl Tarot, it having such a great first day, Heaven isn't here yet. So right now, Bad Girl Tarot is my favorite project, and I'm very excited.
There was one other thing that you mentioned, but you didn't elaborate on. You said that you feel like you're saying goodbye to a certain way of doing things, or the girls in heaven. So, if you're saying goodbye to that, what are you saying hello to, or what can you tell us about what's going down in the future for you?
I wrote, I think, like the most crazy story that I've ever written. And I wrote it in the Tokyo airport, the Narita airport. I was flying back home. I just went there on a little vacation. It was really great, but the flight was super late. And then we had to go out and then turn around after 2 hours because the engine was having trouble. So I wasn't on the news, which is great, still here, but I was just insane that night. And I was just like, well, I can't look at my phone anymore. There's nothing else to do. I'll just start writing something down. And it turns out I just had all of these ideas, and it really was moving in a direction more of like Tezuka, his Gekiga 70s crazy period, his crazy sort of reactionary period when he's doing Barbara and Book of Human Insects. And I was writing something like that. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go back to black and white. Like I'm going to go
Oh,
back to
wow.
Nurse. I'm going back to kind of where I started. And that is so cool. Like, yeah. So I just listened to my brain for better or worse. And that seems to be the direction. So I can't wait. When the deck is out and everybody's got it, that'll be the next thing.
Well, I'm glad I asked. I wish I could ask you more stuff because I don't want to go beyond the scope of heaven. And so, unless you have something else you wanted to add, I really just am tickled pink to have had some time to chat with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for doing your homework. And I hope you enjoyed Profondo Rosso. And I hope you'll continue your Giallo journey.
Well, thank you, Katie.
Thank you.